恭请大德善听，为此法会急切众生，请转妙法轮，教导我们如何了生脱死离苦得乐，殊证无生。Will the Sangha with great virtue, out of compassion, for the sake of this assembly and all living beings, please turn the wonderful Dharma wheel to teach us how to leave suffering and attain bliss and end birth and death, and quickly realize non-birth.
Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Homage to the blessed, noble, and perfectly enlightened one. Namo saranto suchetoye alahati san miao san buddho che. 无上甚深微妙法，百千万劫难遭遇。我今见闻得受持，愿解如来真实义。Supreme and wondrous Dharma, subtle and profound, rarely is encountered, even in a billion eons. But now we see and hear it, and accept it reverently. May we truly understand the Buddha's actual meaning. Namo, quelling disasters, lengthening life, Medicine Master Buddha. 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 Medicine Master does come one, Medicine Master does come one, Medicine Master does come one, Medicine Master does come one. Buddhas, Bodhisattvas, Venerable Master, and all good knowing advisors, Amitofo. This is lecture number 145. Let me change my slides for today. Okay. While I'm getting my slides, we have had a few questions, and you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to ask all of you, do you all have any questions for today? Oh, yes. Okay, you know that's what the chat box is for. Okay, so today what we're going to do is we're going to look at the issue of gender. And we will continue the same sutra passage from last week we didn't have a lecture. 2 weeks ago. Okay, we're going to continue that. So what I'm going to do is I'm not going to read it. I'm only going to read the last slide. But as a summary, in this section of the Medicine Master Buddha Sutra, the Buddha is explaining about how people like ourselves, or the fourfold assembly, who practice the 8 precepts, either for 1 year up to 3 months, and then they make a vow to be reborn in the Pure Land. Okay, here it says the Western Land of Ultimate Bliss, that means the Amitabha Buddha's Pure Land, but their resolve may not be firm. So for people like that, if they hear the name of Medicine Master Buddha, so we know now hearing is not just the simple act of sound passing through your ear, but hearing means you understand what Medicine Master Buddha is all about. Meaning you have read the sutra and you have investigated the sutra, you put the principles of the sutra, the best that you can understand into your daily life, then 8 great bodhisattvas will come upon your death, to remind you of your vows. And instead of going to the heavens, he asks you to choose the Pure Land. But if that fails, if that doesn't happen and you don't choose the Pure Land, then you get reborn in the heavens. And then when your life in the heaven ends, then you'll be born among humans, among people, but not as ordinary people. Okay, so that brings us to the next slide. The Buddha says you may be born as Kshatriyas, Brahmins, laymen, or sons of honorable families. They will be wealthy with storehouses filled to overflowing. Handsome in appearance, they will be surrounded by a great retinue of relatives. So if this is not inducement to pay attention to today's lecture, or all the lectures about not just this sutra, but all sutras, I don't know what will be. And then Buddha says they will be intelligent and wise, courageous and valiant, like great and awesome knights. So this is the part. If a woman hears the name of the world-honored one, Medicine Master Vaidurya Light Tathagata, and sincerely cherishes it, in the future she will never again be born as a female. All right. So anyone want to bring up anything as you read this? Is the Buddha saying that reborn, if you are in a woman's body, is an unfortunate rebirth? Is the Buddha saying that women are bad compared to men? Anyone? No?
From just from reading it sounds like it.
Yes, it does, right, Peggy? Yeah, it sounds as if the Buddha is saying if you are born a woman, you are worse off, right? Okay, so let's investigate a few things before we come to a conclusion, all right? Because to my knowledge, the Buddha, I've not come across any sutra or commentary that actually distinguishes between gender and potential for awakening. It means your potential to be stream enterer, your potential to become second, third stage arhat or full-blown arhat. Gender doesn't make a difference. Okay, so what does the Buddha mean when he says things like this? Because it doesn't just appear in this sutra. For example, in the Earth Store Sutra, it more or less says the same thing. The Earth Store Sutra says, if there are good men and women in the future who see Earth Store's image or hear this sutra or read or recite it, who use incense, flowers, food and drink, clothing or gems as offerings, or if they praise, behold and worship him, they shall attain 28 kinds of benefits. All right, and one of the 28 kinds of benefit is that women will be reborn as men. Okay, all right. So let's, at surface value, it seems like that. But if you read a lot of sutras and you understand cause and effect, you realize that actually it's a very different scenario. Okay, all right, so let's investigate. This sutra is known as the Visakha Sutta or Visakha Sutra. And Visakha was known as the Buddha's chief patroness. So the Buddha had 2 outstanding lay people. The man was known as Anathapindika. He was the one who covered the entire Jeta grove with gold coins, and he tried to purchase the grove from Prince Jeta, and he offered it to the Buddha as a place to build a monastery for the monks to live in. So that's on the man's side. Now on the woman's side is this lady called Visakha. And Visakha was not an ordinary person. When she was only 7 years old, she met the Buddha. She heard a teaching from the Buddha and she became a stream enterer. 7 years old, stream enterer. Okay, all right. So what happened here? Okay, there are many sutras attributed to the lady Visakha. She wasn't a nun. We have stories about nuns later, but this is one of them. Okay, so the sutta goes like this. I heard on one occasion the Blessed One was staying near Savatthi at the Eastern Monastery, the place of Megara's mother. Just for some quick context, Megara is actually the father-in-law of Visakha, but because Visakha was such a matured person and she was able to show her father-in-law how the Dharma was superior to the father's previous belief, that she became known as Megara's mother instead. But in reality, Megara was actually her father-in-law. Okay, are you confused? Okay, now mind, don't worry about it. So going back to the sutra, it says on that occasion, Visakha, Megara's mother, who was actually Megara was her father-in-law, had some dealings with King Pasenadi of Kosola that he did not settle as she had wished. What was this matters that she needed a king to help? She sent some gifts back to her relatives to a neighboring country. And the border guards wanted to impose a very high tax, an unreasonable tax on her gifts. So she went to see the king, hoping that the king would settle the matter for her. But he did not. Why? Because he was the king. He has a lot of important things to attend to. So in the middle of the day, she went to the Blessed One. And on arrival, having bowed down to him, sat to one side. And as she was sitting there, the Buddha said to her, "Well now, Visakha, where are you coming from in the middle of the day?" Isn't that nice? That, if you had that kind of relationship, you can just go and see the Buddha and the Buddha will just ask you, "How are you? What's going on? Why are you here?" Yeah. And then she replied, say, "Just now, Lord, I had some dealings with King Pasenadi that he did not settle as I had wished." Then the Buddha, on realizing the significance of that, the Buddha said, "All subjection to others is painful. All independence is bliss. People suffer due to common concerns, for duties are hard to overcome." All right? Okay, so what I want you to take away from this slide, before I reveal everything, is the first line, all subjection to others is painful. Okay, because that will be very useful for our understanding about what gender plays in the sutras. Okay, so let me see. So when the Buddha says this, of course, the Buddha is not referring to mundane subjection to others like Visakha's problem or issue. What he's actually referring to is our attachments and desires. It is our attachments and desires that bind us to conditioned existence, to samsara. And because of that, the potential for suffering in life after life also, what's the word I'm looking for? Also presents itself. So that's what the Buddha means. We are imprisoned by our own desires and attachments. So we lack independence. Okay? All right. Now let's look at what Bodhidharma has to say about gender. This is from the Wake Up Sermon from Bodhidharma. Bodhidharma says, according to the world, there's male and female, rich and poor. According to the way, or the Tao, or the path, the Buddhist path, there's no male, there's no female, there's no rich, there's no poor. And then Bodhidharma makes a reference. He says, when the goddess, this is from the Vimalakirti Sutra, says, when the goddess realized the way, she didn't change her sex. When the stable boy awakened to the truth, he didn't change his status. This I don't know where that's from, because in the Vimalakirti Sutra, I don't remember coming across a stable boy. Maybe there is, but for now, I'm not going to explain that. Bodhidharma says, free of sex and status, they shared the same basic appearance. The goddess searched 12 years for her womanhood without success. So I do have slides of the Vimalakirti Sutra, because that's very relevant to the issue of gender. Depending on the time that we have for today, we might visit the Vimalakirti Sutra, we might not. Chances are maybe not, but okay, so now let's come back to what does it mean when the Buddha in the sutras say that one will no longer be born a female. Okay, if we take things at surface value, at the literal sense, it's very, very easy to miss the whole picture. Bodhidharma says that the sutras are full of metaphors. It's only fools who don't understand, who don't get the meaning of the metaphor. For example, when we scatter flowers, or when you read in the sutras where it says someone lectures the sutra so well that heavenly flowers rain down. Flowers means being able to speak the Dharma well. So when we offer flowers to the altar or to the shrine, we have to remind ourselves that outside we are offering flowers, but the spirit of offering flowers means we have to investigate the Dharma. That's what it means. So flower is a metaphor, all right? It means something else. Okay, so when it comes to being born a female, let's look at what being in reality, like say at the present world, what does it mean to be born a female? There are a lot of places in this world where you get discriminated based on a lot of things, and one of them is your gender. And there are a lot of societies that place women at a disadvantage, and they don't share the same freedom as men do. It's very unfair. All of this is because of what? Because of men. Men are the ones that oppress women. So in the sutras, the Buddha is speaking to people. The people who really identify with this are the people whose gender puts them at a disadvantage. That's number one. Okay. Number two, the people who the Buddha is speaking to, if you use your wisdom and you expand the meaning, anyone who's being oppressed. So what the Buddha is trying to say here is people who have a lack of freedom. So we shouldn't be too narrow in our interpretation. Okay. So who are these people who are bound by others, who are being oppressed? It includes gender, and this applies to people who are still bound by karma, by their karma. That means people whose next birth is dictated by the things that you have done, and the things that you are doing, and the things that you're going to do. And you have no idea on how to control what's going on. You just live your life day to day, not knowing the principles of cause and effect, and not knowing what to do in order to get what you want. The Buddha is speaking about people like that, beings who are still bound by karma. So the Buddha isn't really saying female is bad, because like I said, I've never come across a sutra or commentary that says that being a female prevents you from achieving the same things that a man can achieve in the Dharma. Okay, never. I've never come. If there are, then yes, you could. I can sit here and say, yeah, maybe the Buddha is saying being born female is bad, but that's not what this is about. Okay, so conversely, there's no point in being born a man, but you are a slave or you're oppressed your whole life. Then there's what point is there being born a man? Okay, so if we understand this principle, then we also realize how important it is for us to never oppress other living beings. Why? Because then in the future you will be put in the same position as well. Okay. Also, it reveals how humans, people who are ignorant, how easily we get confused by appearances. And because we get confused by appearances, we judge people at a very superficial level. Judge people on their looks, we judge people on their success, we judge people on how intelligent we think they are, on their fame. We get, because of we don't know, we get so confused by outer appearances. But the sutras tell us a very different story. In the sutras, how we tend to value or judge people have nothing to do with a person's potential for awakening or with their Buddha nature. Nothing to do at all. For example, the sixth patriarch. All right, before he was a sixth patriarch, he was so poor, he was uneducated, he could not read, and he was very poor. He had to collect firewood for a living, and he wanted to leave home, but he was not able to because he had to care for his mom until it was someone gave him an amount of money. It was said that this person had an unresolved karmic connection, or maybe not unresolved, but had a karmic connection. What does that mean? I'm not sure. But this person gave him a contribution so he could provide for his mother and he could leave home. He could seek the Dharma. So even when he went to the temple of the fifth patriarch, everyone there looked down on him. Why? Because he couldn't read. And not only he couldn't read, he looked different because he came from a different region. He came from the south. I'm not sure where the monastery of the fifth patriarch was, but the people where appearances were different. And he looked poor because he didn't have money, so he didn't wear fancy clothes. So let me see. So he was poor, he was illiterate, and he looked he looked different. So he was discriminated on all those grounds. And even when he became the sixth patriarch, they still did not they still did not recognize him, although he was kind of like endorsed by the fifth patriarch himself. And they wanted to steal the robe and the bowl, what they mistook for symbols of the being a patriarch, rather than realizing that wisdom is from inside. Okay, so that's the sixth patriarch. In the Shurangama Sutra, there was a courtesan, okay, who saw Venerable Ananda and fell in love with him and wanted to have him as her husband. And when she was brought in front of the Buddha, and the Buddha taught her, she became a third stage arhat. At that time, Venerable Ananda was only a first stage arhat. And this was a courtesan, a lady of the night. And then there's a mass murderer, Venerable Angulimala, who had killed 499 people and then wanted to kill his own mother, then saw the Buddha, changed his mind and said, oh, the Buddha is a bigger trophy, more impressive. And he wanted to kill the Buddha. Here was a man who terrorized the whole entire city. The king with all his guards were terrified of him, and 499 people. And he was mad. He not just murdered 499 people, but he would chop off their finger. His name literally means necklace of fingers. So he would chop off, I think, their little finger, and he would put it on a string and wear around his neck. So, I don't think there's anyone else in history that has that kind of reputation, right? We have what is called the Jack the Ripper. I'm not sure if Jack the Ripper is fictional or real. I think it was real, right? But, and then some modern people, but there's no one like Angulimala who had 499 murder victims and would wear their fingers as a trophy on his neck. Yeah. So anyway, he met the Buddha and he became an arhat. He ended birth and death. And then there was a man called Sudi Pantaka and his brother Maha Pantaka, little roadside and big elder roadside. Sudi Pantaka was so stupid, all right, that the Buddha tried to teach him a verse. And if the verse was 4 words, by the time he could memorize the last 2 words, he had forgotten the first 2 words. That was how stupid he was. He was not intelligent at all, to the point that he wanted to leave home. The brother had some friends. I think there were 5 of them. They went to seek the Buddha because they wanted to leave home. But they didn't want him to come along because they told him, you are too stupid to become a monk. You will never understand. But the Buddha accepted him and he became an arhat. Before his brother and the brother's friends were successful, he was the first one. So you have someone who can't read, poor, doesn't look like someone you would respect. You have a mass murderer. You have a courtesan. And then you have someone who is so stupid that they cannot memorize a single line of verse. But all these people became arhats. So it tells you something about the way we tend to judge people. And gender is one of them. Male, female, that's one of them. All right? Okay. So what happens when you are no longer confused by appearances? What happens when you get to a point in your practice where gender does not make any difference anymore? Okay, let's look at one. This is from a collection of poems known as, not yet. That's the next few slides. For now, it's a sutta called the Soma Sutta, or Soma the Bhikkhuni. Soma is her name. So what did she do? In the morning, she went for alms. And then after she had collected alms, she went back to where she was staying, which is known as the Blind Man's Grove, and she sat down at the foot of a tree for the day's abiding. In other words, she was meditating. Then Mara, desiring to arouse fear, trepidation, and terror in the Bhikkhuni Soma, desiring to make her fall away from concentration, approach her and address her in words. In other words, someone trying to be funny with her. Mara, the evil one, can represent 2 things, okay, depending on what's going on with that individual. It can represent Mara as in the external Mara, trying to create trouble and prevent a practitioner from concentration or from their practice. Or it can also represent an internal Mara. Either one makes no difference, okay, because both you need the same amount of wisdom and virtue to overcome, okay, all right. If you can't overcome the outer one, you can't overcome the inner one. If you can't overcome the inner one, you can't overcome the outer one either. So it makes no difference. Okay. So what Mara said? Mara said, that state so hard to achieve, which is to be attained by the seers, can't be attained by a woman with her 2-fingered wisdom. Okay. So Mara has been very, what's the word for it? When you look down on someone, what's that word? I can't, it's on the tip of my tongue. Anyway. Okay, so if someone knows, please type it into the chat box for me. So Mara looks down on her, especially at her gender. So you're just a woman and your wisdom can be measured by 2 fingers. How can you achieve the same level of concentration as probably the monks or the seers? So she said, who is this that's telling me this? Is it a human or a non-human? Is it like a spirit or something? Okay, so Peggy says the word is vicious. Vicious, yes, definitely. Vicious is a right word. Condescending, I think. I'm looking for something like condescending or something even worse. Okay, but vicious works as well. Thank you. Okay, so then she realizes that it is Mara who is trying to play a trick on her. Okay. What Mara doesn't know is that Soma is already an arahant. She has already ended birth and death. I think, if I'm not mistaken, I think she's already ended birth and death. So she replies to Mara, she says, what does being a woman have to do with it? What counts is that the heart is settled and that one sees what really is. Only one to whom it might occur, I'm a woman or I'm a man or I'm anything at all, is fit for Mara to address. Know this, evil one, you are defeated, you are finished. So she put Mara in a place. Why? Because her wisdom is greater than Mara. So what is she trying to say? She says only for people who are still confused by existence. When we are confused, taking the 5 skandhas, our form, the 5 aggregates for our body, to be ourselves, our mind and body, when we get attached to them, he says only those people, because only those people will still have the view of I'm a man or I'm a woman, or I'm a woman or I'm a man, or I'm anything at all, anything in between, and they say only someone like that, Mara, you can is under your influence. Yeah, but for someone who has gone beyond, they are free of all this. Okay, all right. So what does the Buddha have to say? The Buddha gives some instructions to lay women in terms of practice, and Buddha says this is from a sutra called Wuddhi Sutta. I think Wuddhi means growth, realizing potential kind of growth. So the Buddha says a female disciple of the noble ones who grows in terms of these 5 types of growth, grows in the noble growth. That means you're walking the noble eightfold path. Grasps hold of what is essential, what is excellent in the body. Okay, she grows in what? In terms of conviction. Okay, so if you're a man, you should also pay attention. All right, this applies to anyone. So you grow in terms of conviction. That means in your confidence of the Dharma. You grow in terms of your virtue. That means in how you hold the precepts and how you regard not just yourself but people. You grow in terms of learning, in right view of understanding what you should do and should not do. You grow in terms of generosity, so you lessen your desire and your attachments, and you benefit people around you. And you grow in terms of discernment. That means in your wisdom. Okay? So what the Buddha is trying to say here is real excellence is not in the physical body itself. It's not your body that determines if you're excellent or not. It's not just because you're born a man or you're born a woman or whatever you're born as a king or whatever. But it is in how you apply yourself in the Noble Eightfold Path. It is your intention, your conduct, and how you develop your practice. So then there's another slide. The Buddha says, growing in terms of these 5 types of growth, the female disciple of the Noble One grows in the noble growth, grasps hold of what is essential, what is excellent in the body. And then the Buddha says, growing in conviction and virtue, discernment, generosity, and learning, a virtuous female lay disciple, such as this, takes hold of the essence within herself. So the essence here, this is a Theravada Sutra, but since we are in the Mahayana practice, we can easily, without error, interpret essence here to mean your Buddha nature. Okay, you won't be wrong. All right? Okay. So our Buddha nature is not limited by your body or your gender. All right? Okay. All right. So now let's look at what time is it? 10:20. Okay. Still have time. Let's look at some other women who became arhats, okay, and achieved true freedom, no more oppression. So this is from a bhikkhuni called Venerable Mutta, and this is from the collection of poems known as the Tathagata. There are 2 collections of poems of elder monks and nuns. Elder meaning they are arhats. Tathagata refers to the women, and Tathagata refers to the collection of poems by the monks. All right? Okay. So usually these poems are recorded when they achieve enlightenment or they end birth and death. So Venerable Mutta says, so freed, so thoroughly freed I am. Freed from what? He said, from 3 crooked things set free. From mortar, pestle, that means the kitchen, and crooked old husband. Having uprooted the craving that leads to becoming, I am from aging and death set free. There you go. Free from kitchen and free from husband. She must have really had a miserable husband for her to reference him in her enlightened poem of enlightenment. Okay. This is Venerable Sona, who had 10 children. Okay, she said, 10 children I bore from this physical heap. Then weak from that age, I went to a nun. She taught me the Dharma, aggregates, sense media, and properties. Hearing her Dharma, I cut off my hair and ordained. Having purified the divine eye while still a trainee, I know my previous lives where I live in the past. So look at this, a mother of 10. And mother of 10, I guess at that time also means housewife. And she didn't even take the full precepts yet. And she already, purified the divine eye and she could recollect her past lives. And she said she developed the themeless meditation. That means the deeper, I think these are the four deeper levels of absorption above the four dhyanas. Well-focused oneness. I gained the liberation of immediacy from lack of clinging unbound. In other words, she became an arhat. Yeah. Okay, let me see. What was that sound just now? Got a sound. Okay. And then we have Kisa Gotami. Kisa Gotami had a very unfortunate married. After she got married, she suffered a lot. And I shared a story before, but this is her poem. In today's WhatsApp chat, I also shared her story, one of her poems, and in that she was known as Patachara, the nun Patachara. That was her bhikkhuni name. Before that, I think she was known as Kisa Gotami. There are several versions of her story because it's been so long. So this is one of the versions, all right? So she says, having admirable friends has been praised by the sage, meaning the Buddha, with reference to the world. Associating with an admirable friend, that means a good, wise, knowing advisor, says, even a fool becomes wise. People of integrity should be associated with. In that way, discernment grows. Associating with people of integrity, one would be released from all suffering and stress. Would know stress, the origin of stress, cessation, and the Eightfold Path, the Four Noble Truths. All right? So she says, stressful, painful is the woman's state. So says the tamer of tameable people. Being a co-wife is painful. Some, on giving birth once, slit their throats. Others, of delicate constitution, take poison. In the midst of a breech birth, both mother and child suffer destruction. Going along about to give birth, I saw my husband dead. All right, so what happened was this. She grew up in a wealthy family, but then she wanted to marry someone who her parents didn't approve. So they ran away, they eloped. And they had a child. And then when she was pregnant with a second child, she wanted to return to her parents' home to give birth there because she knew that the parents would forgive her. But her husband wasn't very cooperative because her husband had felt that, your parents will forgive you, but might be a different story. They might probably imprison me because they were wealthy, or punish him, torture him. So he was very afraid. But he eventually agreed. But by that time, she was heavily pregnant with the child. So on the way back to the house, they had to travel by road. A big storm happened. And while she was trying to... so when the big storm came, the husband went to gather grass and sticks to try to build her shelter. And as he was gathering the materials, he was bitten by a snake and he died immediately. Then poor Kisa Gotami, while waiting for the husband, in the middle of the night, it was dark, she had to shield her two children. She gave birth in the middle of the road. Okay, so let me see. Let me advance a slide. So giving birth in the road, I hadn't reached my own home. 2 children deceased, my husband dead in the road, miserable me. Oh, spoiler. Okay, now I'll explain as we go along. Said my mother, father, and brother were burning on a single pyre. Is that how you pronounce it? Pyre. Your family all gone, miserable. You suffered pain without measure. Your tears have flowed for many thousands of lives. That's what the Buddha told her. Then I saw in the midst of the charnel ground the muscles of sons being chewed. Okay, so what happened was this. She waited for the husband to come back while the storm was happening, and she was shielding. She had gave birth by then, and then she was shielding her newborn baby and her very young son with her own body. And then when the storm had passed and the sun had come up, she went to look for the husband and saw her husband lying there dead. So as if that wasn't enough, as she continued back to her parents' home, she had to cross a river. So she put her eldest child on. She left her eldest child on the bank on the river because she could only carry one of them at one time safely. So she carried the newborn to across the river, and she put the newborn baby down. And as she put the newborn baby down, and she wanted to recross the river to come back for her firstborn, down came an eagle and snatched the newborn baby away. So she's in her desperate attempt to try to save her newborn, she was waving her arms at the eagle. And when her firstborn, very, very young, saw his mother waving her arms, he thought the mother was calling him to cross the river. So he waded into the river and was washed away. So that's what she means. Two children deceased, her husband dead. So she had nothing left. As she reached home, she was told that her parents' house had caught fire and her remaining relatives were burned, and then she was left alone. And there are other accounts of the story that explains that she couldn't go back to her husband's side of the family because without sons anymore, she would be they would not welcome her, something like that. Yeah. All right. Okay. Now continuing. Says, with family all gone, despised by all, I reached the deathless. I've developed this path, noble, eightfold, going to the deathless. Having realized unbinding, I've gazed in the mirror of Dharma. I've extracted the arrow, put down the burden, done the task. I, Kisa Gotami Terry, my heart well released, have said this. So in other versions of this story, she's the one who lost her son, and then she went mad with grief. Also in this story, she went mad with grief in this version. And then she found the Buddha and she asked the Buddha to bring her baby son back to life. And the Buddha said that, okay, if you go to every house and if you can collect a mustard seed from a house that has never seen death before, and if you can collect 100 mustard seeds, I will help you. That's what the Buddha told her. And after a few houses, she realized that, death, every house here has had someone died before. And she was able to break out of a cycle of grief, listen to the Buddha's teaching, and also become an Arahat. So that's Kisa Gotami. Okay, let me see. 10:30, we have some questions. I think, okay, let me see. Let me end this slideshow. Let me find the slide, because I did mention that I was going to talk about how gender came to be. So at least let me introduce those slides first. All right. Oh, no. Right, hold on. Gender. Okay. All right. Just let me confirm. You all see my screen, right? On gender.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you, Lucy. Okay, so this is how humans came to be on Earth. You could say that. Okay, in our world, how humans appear in the world. Okay, it comes from where? There's a sutra called the Agana Sutta, DN 27. This same account is also in some Mahayana sutras, but we just refer to this. In the beginning, there were no humans, and this is during the Kalpa known as when the world is forming. So it says the Abhasara beings are from the light sound heaven. The light sound heaven is the second, is known as one of the heavens of the second dhyana. The heavens of the second dhyana, you get there from if you can enter the second dhyana in your practice. So they are very pure in terms of defilements of the mind. And this heaven, heavens of the second dhyana has 3 heavens, and these abhasara beings are from the highest heaven, the 3rd heaven. Okay, so the beings there are mind-made. That means they have no physical body. They feed on rapture. That means the rapture of dhyana bliss. What is when you come to the temple, when you eat, there's a verse that we recite: "May all beings take dhyana bliss for food." That's what it means. So not only they feed on rapture, but they radiate their own light. So they don't need light because their bodies shine with light, and they fly through the air and they're very glorious. Okay, so it says feeding on rapture refers to the jhana or dhyana factor of joy, which is a characteristic of the second dhyana. So they don't eat physical food because they literally live on dhyana bliss. All right. So what happens is these beings are going to die because it's still heaven and they haven't ended birth and death. So when their lifespan ends, they pass away from the realm and they are born in the vicinity of earth. What earth? This earth that we know of. Technically, it's not just this earth. It also includes the 4 continents. We are in the southern continent. The other 3 continents we can't see until we develop some spiritual abilities. Anyway, this happens for a very, very long time. Okay, they are just floating around, still more like a Brahma from the Brahma heavens than they are like humans. Okay, they're also spontaneously born, and which means they just appear fully formed. They don't have to go through a womb. They don't have to grow up like humans do. Okay, and that also means at this point there's no there's no male or female, there's no gender. Okay, and there's no also means no sexual reproduction. Let me take a bit of drink. That's how pure they are. You could say they're all males basically. I'm not sure. Let me see. They have physical. I'm not sure if. Let me see. Let me check. Just give me one moment. Let me see if they have physical bodies. And let me see. Let me see if they have height. Yes, they do have physical bodies. So I think at this level, they are. I think they're all males. Yeah, something like that. Basically, it doesn't make any difference because to them, it doesn't make any difference. So at this stage, they are still indistinct. It says that they are still indistinguishable from their previous life. That means they're more like gods than humans. Okay, but in terms of potential for defilement, they're more like humans than gods. All right. Okay. So what is the state of the world at that time? All right. At this time, the great earth was still submerged in the primordial water and was covered by great darkness. As the sun and moon were not yet manifest, it is implied that the sun and moon existed but was not visible. So it's very hard to understand this. Maybe Shufu will explain. Shufu has actually explained this whole process before. So it's not sure whether it is their luminous bodies that outshine the sun and the moon, or that the sun and moon just did not shine on that particular place at that time. All right. So, as the primordial water continued to subside, there formed on its surface a covering called Rasa Patavi, tasty earth. This is compared to the skin that forms on boiled milk as it cools down. Its color is compared to butter or ghee, or to the golden flowers of the Kanikara tree. That means yellow, golden yellow. The scent was like the subtle aromas found in the Deva worlds, and the taste as sweet as wild honey. So this was what was on the surface of the earth at that time. All right. Then Some of the beings, those of a greedy nature, wondered what this stuff could be, and taking some of it up on the tip of their fingers, tasted it. So this is when they started eating the food. This was a critical moment in the primordial descent of these Brahma-like beings into devolved humans. So this marked their downfall. True Brahmas are beyond the realm of sense desire and in fact do not possess the senses of smell or taste. So if you are a true Brahma god in the second dhyana heavens, you are unable to smell or taste because you don't have those faculties. Physically, you don't have those faculties. So that's what makes them different from their previous life. Okay. Taking up some of the rasa patavi to taste is a complete departure from Brahma nature, and even their initial curiosity about it can be seen as an impulse more human than Brahmic. Why? Because if they were truly enjoying the Dhamma bliss of the second dhyana, their mind wouldn't move to that extent. They wouldn't even think about, trying to taste. The mind won't even, the thoughts just won't come. Like thinking, oh, can that be eaten? You know, and to the point of experimenting and testing, it won't even occur to them. But it did to these people, and that's why we are from them. Okay. So it says these beings began consuming more until they began breaking off great chunks of the rasa patavi, thus further entangling themselves in the world of coarse sensuality as their bodies become coarser and their self-luminance disappeared. They were now plunged into darkness, so the world was no longer illuminated by their own light. It was at this point that the sun and moon appeared and the reckoning of time by days, fortnights, months, and years. This marks the end of the expansion of the universe and the beginning of the era of our current world. We might say that with the appearance of the heavenly bodies in their regular orbits, we have entered into ordinary historical time. Okay, what does this passage mean? When a world comes into being, there are three stages. Okay, let me see. If I'm not mistaken. Let me see if I have notes on this. Maybe I don't have notes on this, but I know that there's either 3 or 4 stages in the development of a world system, and there's a coming into being or expansion, and then there's a period of abiding, which is where we are. Then there's a period of destruction, where the world is consumed by the elements. So right now we're in the middle section, and it takes a very, very long time. So long that the human mind cannot conceive of. So when these beings appeared and they started eating the food until to the extent that they lost luminance and the sun and moon appeared, that was the end of the expansion of the universe. So some people like to compare like the primordial soup of the earth to what scientists say that in the beginning, how life evolved, and how, some people even say that when they tasted the soup, that is kind of like the parallel to Adam and Eve taking the apple. I'm not too sure. It's interesting to look at it that way. But unless you can really go back in time, it just remains at an interesting level. But people have tried to do that. And okay, so because it is 10:40 now, we are running out of time, and we have questions to address. I will keep the remaining slides for next week. Okay, next week we're going to look at the issue of gender more and how gender came to be among humans. All right, and why then we should not take gender so seriously. Okay, all right, let me look at. For now, does anyone have any questions? Well, I look for my notes. Anyone? No? Or questions on what we just went through? Okay, one thing to note is that this is not about when humans, like when was I first born, like how did it all happen. This is in a world system, how did humans come to be? Okay, two different subjects. Okay, all right. So there is a question about, does Buddhism approve of same gender relationships? And connected to that is, should we as Buddhists ostracize same gender relationships? Okay, so for those of you who have read Shufu's talks and his lectures, sometimes it seems as if Shufu takes a very strong stance against same gender relationships. Okay, but also in the talks, Shufu says, I'm not scolding you, I'm just making you aware. He says things, but there are also other extreme things he says, like these are demonic behavior or against the rule of heaven. Shufu says things like that. Okay. Now, Shufu can say those things. All right. Why? Because Shufu can do things normal people cannot do, or at least I believe in that in the stories that I read about Shufu. And he also knows things that normal people don't. And this is evident in the way Shufu explains the sutras. So for us, we have to be careful. If you want to talk like Shufu, or you want to adopt Shufu's view or stance, we must make sure that we also can do the same thing Shufu can, and we know the same thing Shufu does, but we don't, right? So we have to be careful when we try to use Shufu's teachings, especially when it involves other people. Okay, because those are very different principles. When Shufu teaches us, the point of learning the Dharma is to recognize our own faults. Okay, it's not to recognize other people's faults. Just other people's faults are no business of anyone else, especially when we all have our own faults. So when Shufu teaches that it is for us to reflect inside, Shufu says, don't be like a camera. A camera can only take pictures outside. A camera cannot look at itself. So Shufu says, don't go around taking photographs. Don't be the Dharma police. Don't go pointing out other people's faults. We learn the Dharma to recognize our own faults. And if we recognize faults in ourselves, then we need to change. Regardless of your sexual orientation, regardless of who you are, Buddhism is not about oppressing others or telling other people, forcing other people to do certain things. No, it's about improving ourselves. So when we learn Buddhism or the Dharma, we discover about wholesome and unwholesome karma. So if we choose to, we can do wholesome deeds and then create favorable future conditions for ourselves so that we can avoid our own suffering. Okay? But sometimes there are people who their self-views are so strong and their egos are so large that they become stronger or more important than what they learn from the Dharma. They want the Dharma to conform to their views rather than to learn from the Dharma. Then, of course, these people at that moment, they totally miss the point of the Buddha's teachings, and it's very, very hard for them to, at that stage in their lives, for them to accept the Dharma. Okay? So, first principle is whatever Shufu has said about same gender relationships. If you are not in that category, then you don't have to worry about it. Okay, but if you are, okay, Shufu has taught us a lot of things. Okay, about desire, about bad habits, and all that. Same gender relationships is just one of them. Okay, and if you take a step back from same gender, it is an issue of desire. It's not the same gender is just the manifestation of the symptoms. Okay, the cause is desire. So all of us have problems with desire. All right, so the first principle is it is for us to examine ourselves, not to examine others. All right, because when we try to examine other people, that's when problems in the world start happening. If you look at a lot of problems in the world right now, is when people think that other people should do or behave or believe in things that they believe in too. Then so okay, so that's number one. When it comes to other people, all right, we have the Bodhisattva path to look up to. What is the Bodhisattva path? Okay, in the Bodhisattva path, Guanyin, for example, and we'll explore Guanyin because it has to do with gender. In the Lotus Sutra, Guanyin Bodhisattva will take any form as long as the form is suitable for the person she is trying to help. In other words, Guanyin doesn't discriminate. If you read the Universal Door chapter in the Lotus Sutra, I think that's chapter 11. I think it's chapter 11, yeah, or 20 something. Go find out for yourself. Okay, if you read the Universal Door chapter in the Lotus Sutra, you realize that Guanyin, she is unconditional in her help for people. Guanyin Bodhisattva doesn't come to you and ask you some questions first. She doesn't say, do you believe in a Buddha? Have you taken the 5 precepts? Are you a vegetarian? Do you bow today? Before she decides whether she wants to save you or not. No. You don't have to be deserving of Guanyin Bodhisattva's help in order for Guanyin Bodhisattva to help you. Okay, she has her reasons. She wants living beings to be happy. Why? It's only when you are happy that you can create merit for yourself. She wants beings to be happy so that she can develop positive affinities with you, so that when you are ready to bring forth your Bodhi resolve, she can say something to you and you will be receptive. You won't turn her away. All right? So why can Guanyin do that, or Bodhisattvas do that? It's because they understand cause and effect. What does this has to do with cause and effect? Okay, who we are right now is a result of our past karma. The problem is we forget. All right, so who we are right now. Okay, so Sri Ling says chapter 25 of the Lotus Sutra is a universal door chapter. Yeah, thank you very much, Sri Ling. So we are all result of our past karma. There's a saying, I am heir to my karma, born of my karma, something of my karma. In other words, everything that happens to you is because who you are right now, everything happens, what will happen to you is a result of what you do. Okay? So yes, you can say that, yeah, it's our fault for being who we are, but because we forget, you can't blame someone. If someone blames you for something that you did in your past life and that's why you are like this in this life, is it fair? It's not fair at all. Although it is your karma, but it's not fair to be blamed, right? And it's not conducive at all. It doesn't help anyone or any matters at all. So that's why Guanyin does not judge who you are. Not like people. We judge people at the slightest thing. Sometimes the way people comb their hair or they wear their makeup or the clothes they wear, we judge people based on all those superficial things. But Guanyin doesn't. Because Guanyin understands. That's what wisdom is. Guanyin can see why you are who you are right now, but she also sees your potential. Like the Buddha seeing the potential in Angulimala, the mass murderer, and being able to save him from his fate. He was destined for the hells, Angulimala, if the Buddha hadn't come to save him. But the Buddha could also save him because the Buddha had positive affinities with Angulimala from past lives ago. The Buddha made him happy. The Buddha did all kinds of things for Angulimala. And also, it takes 2 hands to clap. So Angulimala also probably did a few things to bring himself in front of the Buddha in this present life. Okay, so what we can learn from bodhisattvas like Guan Yin is not to be harsh on people, not to be judgmental on people, because there's always a reason why like that. And at the same time, we also should not be proud of what we have if we have any achievements. For example, monastics. Monastics should not be proud that they are monastics. Why? Because the only reason they are monastic in this present life is not because they made that choice. That choice was already made for them from their past lives. They have left home so many times that in this life they feel that it is very natural for them to leave home. So you can't take credit for that. Just like rich people can't take credit for being rich, because it is because of the generosity that you have shown in previous lives. If you are smart, you can't be proud that you're smart. It's because according to the sutras, you investigated wisdom and the sutras from past lives. That's why in this life you are intelligent and you can understand things. So that's cause and effect. That's understanding karma. So if we have that attitude, then we stop judging people. It does not mean we condone or we encourage behavior. No, that's a totally different thing. But it means we don't make things worse for people who are already undergoing dissatisfaction with their lives. All right? And it is only then that if there's an opportunity for them to come, and it's only then, okay, that there's a possibility for them even coming to ask you for help in the first place. But if you judge, if you look down or you disapprove, of their behavior, I'm not saying you approve, okay, but disapprove, they will never come to you for help. They will never seek wisdom from you. Why? Because you don't show any wisdom. There's nothing in your behavior that exhibits any wisdom or signs of wisdom. All right? So Buddhism, or some aspects of Buddhism, or some teachers of Buddhism may not approve of same-gender relationships, but it's not that we take it and oppress others. No. It's for us to learn about our own desires. Okay? For us to act and behave, we look at the Bodhisattva path, which is to treat people unconditionally. Maybe if you don't have the wisdom yet, you can't go out and actually treat people unconditionally, but at least in our inner thoughts, we don't create inner animosity against anyone. Okay, there's a story, there's a true story about there's a monk who, when he was eating, he will regurgitate the food, chew it, and then swallow it again. And then the monks felt that this was against the precepts, because after you eat, how can you bring up the food from your stomach and then chew it and eat like you're eating a second time? So they went to the Buddha and they complained to the Buddha. And then the Buddha explained to them, oh, this monk in his previous life, he was actually a cow. So this is his habit carried forward from there. He can't help himself. This is just how he does things, So the Buddha made allowance in the precepts to allow for people to do that. So that's wisdom, understanding why things are a certain way. So until we can understand why certain people are a certain way, we don't pass judgment on them. All right? Okay. There are more, such as blurring of gender, which we will come to in next week's lecture. All right. Let me see. And then also a question about being vegetarian. Is it a must? We'll also come to next week. For now, before we end, is there anything anyone would like to bring up? Oh? Nobody? Okay. All right. For next week, and from now on, I was thinking of, instead of beginning the class at Asia time 9:45 or 6:45 or 7:45, depending on where you are, I was thinking of starting 15 minutes earlier. I know for someone like Ron, who's in California, it's very early. Ron, do you have any thoughts on this?
Yes, I would say it's early, but 15 minutes is not going to make a big deal of difference. I might be a little late sometimes.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Ron, for your understanding. All right. Let's share transfer merit. Okay, I'm going to put my palms together. May every living being, our minds as one and radiant with light, share the fruits of peace with hearts of goodness, luminous and bright. If people hear and see, our hands and hearts can find in giving unity. May our minds awake to great compassion, wisdom, and to joy. May kindness find reward. May all who sorrow leave their grief and pain. May this boundless light dispel the darkness of our endless night. Because our hearts are one, this world of pain turns into paradise. May all become compassionate and wise. May all become compassionate and wise. Okay, 3 bows to the Buddha. Second bow. Third bow. Half bow. Bowing respect to the Rebel Master. Second bow. Third bow. Half bow. Okay, Amrita for everyone. We'll see you all next week. If you have questions regarding gender or anything with the Dharma, please. I hope you have some next week. Okay, Amrita for.
Okay, thank you, Dharma Master. Good night.